Awesome. So the fun part of our show, we call it the LightImm Round, where we really take our guests through fun questions, sometimes games. In your case, these are questions that kind of reflect your bio and your life story, but we thought we'd pitch in as well. Question one, you own a restaurant and you have to feature the best of Alberta and the best of Portugal on a plate. What are you serving and why?
Okay, so hands down, it's got to be steak and potatoes. Okay, and if I'm thinking about like Alberta, it's got to be Alberta beef. All right, and potatoes, just because you can't have one without the other. And then pastéis de natas on the side for dessert. But I would put it right in with the main meal. And pastéis de natas, it's like this cream-filled pastry that's baked, and it's just, oh, it's so rich and just delicious. And I found some in Costco of all places that weren't too bad. But from Portugal, the pastéis de nata, absolutely. That hands down, that's what I do. Yeah.
It's funny, Will, that whenever we're in the LightImm Round, that we're both hungry.
And I'm just like, my mouth is watering it. I'll actually share, Mark, my answer was steak as well, because of course from Alberta. I think I went to a place called Ruth's and I was like, steak is
Ruth's, yeah.
I was like, oh, incredible steak. Yeah. And then I was like, we got to put an egg tart on there somewhere as well, probably.
It looks like we have a consensus here. I was going to say steak as well, actually.
Right. Well, that's a quick question. We want to go number 2, LJ?
Sure. What's your worst memory of PE class? Since, you taught PE and you were so much into sports, I'm actually just curious, what's the worst? What's the opposite spectrum to that?
So the worst, so you're talking about the worst memory of me teaching in a physical education class or being in it itself, or?
Either or.
Hands down, distance running. Distance running. I hated running long distance. And I did a lot of track. And there was always these beginning where we all had to run and build up our core and our cardio. I'm like, freak, I'm a high jumper. Okay. But anyways, that was the worst, running long distance. And all of my distance runners and like, they're awesome. They're great guys. But I kept telling them, look, by the time you're done your 10K, race, you're so exhausted that you don't have the energy to celebrate. And so, so there you go. There's the worst memory of PE classes is distance running.
Well, now, LJ, you go first. I need to think about this a little.
Being picked for basketball, because I'm the anti-Filipino here, actually, because you probably both know the Filipinos love their basketball.
They love it.
I'm not into that. So sorry guys. So that was my worst memory, being picked for basketball class.
Yeah. Wow. I'm gonna go with the sit and reach test. I think that's God. I think it's a biased test. I think it didn't take into account like certain genetic, short arm problems that people had. But no, I barely touched the box every time, and it was quite embarrassing. So I put the sit and reach test.
Nice. That's a classic. That's a classic.
It is one. That and the 12-minute run, like how many laps you could do, I was always like, not. Awesome. Wait, our last one. Go ahead, Mark. You were saying?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I have very fond memories. Well, no, they're not fond, but of the 12-minute run. Oh yes, yep.
Incredible. I was always the slowest one in my class, so it's. Speaking of which, pandemic, need to get back in shape. I don't know what you're doing, Mark, but you're looking much younger than your years, and I'm going down.
I put on so much weight, Will. I'm back on kind of a program to try to curb my Netflix / snacking in the evenings to try to get back into shape. So, but today was no lunch. It was so busy. I didn't even have time to stop for lunch. So I'm looking forward to getting something to eat here in a little bit.
Steak and potato.
Yeah, exactly. Steak and potato.
Steak and potato. I want that too. So last question. Tell me your favorite border story, either when you were working there or if it was a client story and you accompanied them as a lawyer. Yeah. What's your favorite border story?
Okay, so I'm a summer student, and this guy comes in, and in that port of entry, the immigration, it was before 2002. So I worked 2002 when the legislation changed. But at that time, it wasn't CBSA. Immigration was separate from Canada Customs. And so they would do the search and seizure on the road, like down on the main level, and they would refer people up to us for the secondary examination. And in the Carway port of entry, it's a 2-story, and I can still remember being back in one of the corner offices. We didn't have anything to protect ourselves in case we had crazy people, and we had this little buzzer under the desk that we could buzz if we needed the customs guys to come up with their billy clubs, because I don't think anyone was armed at that stage. Anyway, so I was interviewing this guy, and his story just didn't make sense. So I said, okay, well, let's go back. He was from the US and he was coming back to Canada. I can't remember he was doing something. I can't remember what he was doing, but anyways, his story just wasn't matching up. And so I painstakingly went through like, oh, and so where were you born? And then where did you go to elementary school? Like the whole pattern all the way through, just trying to identify what the issue was. In the end, his answers were just questionable enough to ask the customs to go do a search on his vehicle. And as it turns out, this guy had a warrant out for his arrest for attempted murder. And the RCMP came and picked him up. Fortunately, he was doing a good job with his story. He'd actually fled to the US and was there for about 3 years. And so the warrant was there, and he was now coming back to Canada, and he was a Canadian. And he had a driver's license from the US and everything. And that was the craziest story, was going through the interviews and getting someone who had a warrant out for attempted murder. So there you go. That was the highlight of a summer border student. Now they don't ever hire summer students to do what I did, but
Nothing but a buzzer. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. On that note, Mark, thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight. I know that I picked up a lot of inspiration, of energy, and I guess like the impetus to keep moving forward. How about you, Will?
Absolutely. I think Mark is pushing law in a whole new direction. It's redefining our jobs, and it's also, he inspired our podcast. So just as like, a closing note, thank you, Mark. You are an inspiration to both of us, and we look forward to more collaboration down the road as we.
That's my absolute pleasure. I truly do consider it a privilege to be here. You guys are doing things right. It's so cool. And yeah, I really, really appreciate this opportunity.
That means a lot, Mark. Thank you so much.
You bet. Okay, guys, take care.
Take care. All right, so I guess it's my turn to do real talk this week. And this week, I'm going to stay on theme, and I wanted to talk about aversion to expertise, and essentially a call to action to fellow practitioners in the field of immigration law. First of all, nowadays, there is a growing tendency for immigration applicants to do their own applications on their own, for better or for worse. Mark also highlighted the fact that specific systems, whether it be the IRCC or even provincial nomination programs, actually provide platforms where basically, funny enough, practitioners such as ourselves are deplatformed. We're not considered, we're an afterthought. And this is in stark contrast to the fact that immigration continues to grow more and more complicated over time. And as immigration professionals, Mark, Will, and I are witnesses to how immigration continues to become just difficult. And not just for the applicants, but also for practitioners, but actually, in fact, the decision makers and immigration policy makers themselves. And this is why it's kind of counterintuitive to think that more people are resorting to doing applications on their own, even if the risks are growing. The consequences are tremendous, and usually it's one kick in the can. You get one kick, that's your best try, and that's it. Some people are aware of these risks, others are not. So essentially, Will, tonight I'd like to do a call to action, not to hire us, not necessarily, no. Rather, this is a call to action of sharing our toolkit as immigration practitioners to immigration applicants, essentially tweaking the business model, shifting things around in the practice of law to help, at the end of the day, our clients, to help them approach their immigration application with the knowledge and the tools that we as immigration lawyers normally would have. This really punctuates the shift in the last few years, I would say the past decade, since the 2008 financial crisis, where a lot of firms have been steadily adapting to the new technological realities, to this, let's say, disinterest and I say, dissociation and diffusion from points of authority, such as, lawyers, for example, and people will naturally do things on their own. Our job as, custodians of access to justice, for example, is to help them, to equip them with the right tools in order to actually achieve their goals, whether that be by what Mark is doing or what Will is doing, and hopefully what I'm also doing for my own clients. And that is Real Talk tonight.
Thank you so much. Very, very powerful. And actually, that leads to our closing today of telling you about our next episode. We are planning to present to all of you that presentation we were talking about a couple weeks ago to IRCC, because we think that it's important that what we tell stakeholders is also what we tell our other stakeholders in terms of our clients. And we're going to present essentially what we presented to them, but from a client perspective of what they should know and of what they should be aware of. And as well, we're going to dig deeper and deeper into that new change, because the government's new program worth discussing.
We were just scratching the surface. And to dive into next week's topic, will be talking about post-graduation work permits. I'll be talking about transitions for healthcare workers.
Absolutely. We look forward to the next episode. There will be no guest, but you're going to see a little bit more of back and forth from all of us talking about the policy changes and impacts that matter you and your family. And hopefully we'll share a few of our own stories as well during that time.
Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. This is ImmLight episode 5.